Greetings to you all, visitors, those of you joining us live via live stream, members of the media, museum staff, management, and leadership, as well as our director, Dr. Emlyn Coster. My name is Amelia Cowens-Taylor, and I'm the Assistant Head of Communications here at the North Carolina Museum of Natural Sciences. I'm also the Programming and Community Coordinator for Race, Are We So Different? How many of y'all have seen the exhibit? That's worthy of applause. You can give a hand of applause. Okay, so that means the rest of you all are going to go check out the exhibit, right? So like last entry is at 4:30, so after this, y'all can go right across the bridge and go see it. Take advantage of the fact that you're here today. And if not, please come back. The exhibit will be here running now through October the 22nd here at the Museum of Natural Sciences. Now, it's not in this section. This is called the Nature Research Center, so you would have to go across the bridge to our main museum. I am delighted to welcome y'all this afternoon to the lecture and panel discussion portion of the Future of STEM Back to School Minority Opportunity Fair. So again, I'm going to ask you that question now that we're live on live stream. How many of y'all had a good time? Make some noise. Yes. Well, this event is part of a menu of programming created to complement the exhibit Race, Are We So Different? And if it were not for the generous support of our amazing sponsor, this event and our speaker series would not be possible. Everyone, please join me in thanking Mr. Alfred Mays and the Burroughs Welcome Fund. Thank you. And I might mention that we have had generous support from a majority of people in this community who found that this exhibit was worthy of supporting, and we have raised over $330,000 to make sure that Race, Are We So Different, and its supplemental programming are free for the people of North Carolina. So give that a hand as well. So now to our speaker for the afternoon. Teacher turned filmmaker Andre Robert Lee has created films for Urban World, Film Movement, BET, Universal, HBO, Picture House, and DreamWorks. He is the director and producer of The Prep School Negro, which chronicles his life as a prep school student at a predominantly white school. He also produced the documentary, I'm Not a Racist, Am I? And directed and produced the 12-month series, Life Cycles of Inequity, a color-line series on Black men. While Andre isn't a STEM professional per se, he is an educator. And his talk today, Finding Your Place When You Feel You Don't Fit, details his journey in discovering his identity and purpose and how it influenced his film, The Prep School Negro. Midway into his talk, he will then segue to host a panel discussion of STEM professionals from all over the Triangle who will then share their journeys to their careers in STEM, a journey which can be as oftentimes solitary and isolated that parallels Andre's story. Our panelists for the afternoon include Renee Daughtry, founder of Asymmetry, which hosts a series of engaging robotics workshops across the Triangle. Dr. Chelsea Juarez, an NC State assistant professor from the Departments of Sociology and Anthropology, who has studied the evolution of diabetes in Latino populations. Veronique Moses, program director at IBM, with more than 25 years in industry experiences delivering emerging technologies to the market. And Crystal Harden, a former chemistry teacher and now director of programs and strategic initiatives at the Moorhead Planetarium and Science Center in Chapel Hill, North Carolina. You'll hear more about them a little later, but right now, please help me in welcoming Andre Robert Lee.
So good afternoon. Good afternoon. One more time, good afternoon. There we go. I grew up in a Southern Baptist church, so I really like call and response. So I'm going to talk to you real fast, a little bit about me and about my experience, and hopefully that'll lead us into a conversation about where we are. And I thought I'd start with, why do we have this title, Finding Your Place When You Feel You Don't Fit? I spent a lot of time talking about where people don't fit. I went to a private high school in Philadelphia. I was a lower income kid, put there on a scholarship. I made a film about it. We'll talk about that a little bit more. But I'm really committed to the idea of understanding what does it mean to be other. So as you see, I'm very good at exposing myself. And once again, I'm Andre Robert Lee, AKA the Prep School Negro. That's one of my, oh, that's hard to see, isn't it? Oh, well, I'll work you through it. That says the Prep School Negro right there, and Andre Robert Lee, but we'll look at that. It's better on the screens in the back if you need to look back for a second. So what I thought I'd talk to you about was sort of my career and how I got here and where we are today. So I was kind of a kid that was always reading everything and kind of smart in my school community, and I was often called an egghead by people and teased because I liked to read a lot. I wasn't so good at math, but I was a great reader. And so I got this scholarship to go to a high school called Germantown Friends School, also known as GFS in Philadelphia. We'll come back to that a little bit more. After leaving GFS, there's a scholarship right there. After leaving GFS, I went on to be a teacher, and I taught at a high school in East Harlem called Central Park East Secondary School. And it was an alternative school that helped us think about what does it mean to help kids from environments that aren't normally exposed to critical thinking, et cetera, have a chance to explore the world through that way. And it was a very successful school, and it worked really well. And then I went on to work in the film business after teaching, and I took every film job possible on movie sets to find my own way. Because I didn't go to film school, I went to school for education. I got a master's in education. And I say this and point it out because I loved my career, and I loved to have my degree, and I loved that I was a teacher, but I was afraid to jump to the career that I wanted to be a part of. I thought, I can't do entertainment. I don't come from a wealthy family. No one's going to support me. There aren't any people like me. Will I have a chance? My last name is Lee, but I'm not related to Spike Lee. Too bad. How can I move forward in this world? And I luckily jumped into it and said, you know, I'm going to try and do all that I can. And I landed at a place called Miramax. Miramax Films, which is a film distribution company that may be too young for all you the people up there. Wow, hey y'all, what's up top? So I thought I would start with this. Some of the older people in the room might recognize this film, and some people who are younger may not. But anybody recognize what movie this is, by any chance? Shout it out. Scary Movie, nice, awesome. So I told you I was working at Miramax Films, and when I was at Miramax, there were not many people of color. It was me and a woman who was in charge of distribution, and a publicist, and a receptionist. This is a company that had about 1,200 people around the country, and I could only see about 3 black people when I worked in the office in New York City. There may be a few more in other areas, but for the most part, those of us within the offices were in there. So anybody recognize who this guy is right here? What's his name? Marlon Wayans, right? So Marlon was in Scary Movie, and we were making a poster. I worked in the office, we designed a poster for this film, and Marlon Wayans was in Los Angeles, and we were in New York City, and he wanted a whole lot of money to come across the country to be in the poster. And Harvey Weinstein was like, I ain't paying Marlon Wayans that much money to come across the country. And he saw me in the office and said, Andre, come here. And so what he had me do, those are my hands right there in that poster. So instead of bringing Marlon Wayans across the country, Harvey Weinstein was like, Andre, hold this up. And they shot me holding it, and they imposed into the poster. So I'm proud to say that my hands have, I ain't getting no money for it, but my hands have been all around the world on that poster, which I think is kind of funny for a Scary Movie. And I like to make a joke about it and say that diversity works. You know, there's this moment where I was the person in the room that got to take part in that. And it's a more complicated than I'm making it, but I like to make light of the situation and talk about it. So next thing I thought I'd talk to you about was about this film, The Prep School Negro. As I mentioned, it's a film that I made. I made it a number of years ago, and the whole idea was to show people what it was like to be other inside of an institution when most folks don't look like you. How do you survive? What can you do to have a conversation? What does it mean to explore this notion and idea of being other? Because my school was incredible, and it's also really difficult at the same time. Anytime you go into a space, and most folks don't look like you, don't talk like you, don't dress like you feel a little weird, you know? And I think as we talk about the STEM universe, and we'll talk more about why we're focused around STEM careers for minorities, people of color, as we go through the panel, but I think that the whole idea, if we don't talk about what it's like to be other in these environments, we sometimes can feel a little insulated, isolated, feel like our position is wrong or something, but I believe that you have to verbalize that internal dialogue and talk about your experience and own the moments that you are in a community where people don't look like you. So I'm going to show you 4 clips and talk about them really briefly afterwards. I'm kind of going fast because I want us to get to the panel because we have some amazing people who are going to share some great ideas with you. So the first clip that we're going to see is about hair. Anybody recognize who she is? I can't hear y'all. Solange, right? That's my girl. My woman, I should say. Well, not my woman, but you know what I mean. She's really fantastic. And when I first heard this song, I was like, yes, put it out there. Anybody have, I'm sure no one in the room has had an experience with people inappropriately touching their hair, right? That's never happened. Anybody in the room, right? It has? It has, right? So I want you to watch this clip. This is the young woman from the film that we worked on. And she's going to talk. It's about 1 minute long, and then I'll talk to you for a few minutes afterwards, and then we'll keep going. So here comes the first clip. And it's going to work.
When I first started going to school, they wanted to touch my hair. I'd teach them how to do all the dances, how to say all the cool stuff that we say. So, I mean, I definitely was the almanac for white people about black people.
Even the counselors told me some of these white kids have not encountered black people in their everyday lives. So when they come to school here, it's like the first time seeing them. It's a culture shock.
Everybody's parents are doctors and lawyers, and they're making a lot of money at PW. You got mailmans, then you got, grocery workers. Everybody's down on the same level.
If you can't even get past, the fact that you're, one of, a couple black people in your grade, then, you're screwed for the rest of your life if you can't, kind of deal with that.
Okay, that's that first clip. And what I thought was important about this to say was, first, expect and demand equity. And that's for everybody. When you go into any environment and folks may say, well, you don't belong here, or more importantly, you may feel like you don't belong here, I think it's important to walk in and say, you know what? I deserve to be a part of this community. This is mine. I own it and I claim it. And I think you should walk into spaces where you often feel like you don't belong and expect and demand equity. And when I say equity, I don't mean just equality. Equality is diversity in action, people out in the room. Equity is if you're invited to sit at the table, as that great album is called, do you actually participate at the table? Being at the table is one thing, but being told you belong at the table and all the food is passed around, that's real important. Don't just demand to see the table, demand to be included in the table and the activities involved in it. And then secondly, your needs and desires are important. Sometimes folks say, well, like the discussion about, we've had talks about why we have this panel today, why is it focused around minorities? We'll talk about that more in the panel, but the big thing is until the world is completely perfect and fixed, we need to talk about and dig into these issues. So I'll stress those points once again. Expect and demand equity, and then your needs and desires are important. So the next piece I'm going to show you is another moment from the film. And it's about the first day of school. And this is just, you're hearing some kids who were at a conference talk about how they felt being at this environment where they were one of a handful of people. They didn't look like everybody else, and the things that happened to them when they went there. And you'll hear there's a pretty intense word that you may hear one of the kids say to describe what she witnessed. I'm preparing you for that. But listen to what they're talking about and some issues they faced on this first day in a new environment where folks didn't look like them. This waltz is about 1 more minute, and I'll come right back.
This session, workshop, is remembering the first day. Food, living, the people, etc. My first day was intense. But yes.
I went to all black middle school, all black elementary school, so race was never even an issue in my school. But I remember being a freshman and looking at the seniors and them being so angry that I couldn't really understand yet. And then this year, the young Republicans had a conversation about this book called Freakonomics, where they analyze the country, do all the statistics and stuff, and they started talking about the statistic as to whether if all black babies were aborted, the crime rate would lower. I remember thinking this is why those seniors freshman year was so mad, because it's real trying mentally to just have to keep being what this feels like is actually real. It's not, I'm not just making this up.
One time my sophomore year, I was sitting in a room with some other girls, and they were putting on bronzer, and I mean, where I come from, I didn't know what bronzer was before I got there, but you know, I wasn't gonna be rude, I wasn't gonna ask them what bronzer was, I just assumed, I just listened. And one of the girls who is known as like the school addict to bronzer, she just put on a lot, she puts on a heck of a lot of it. And one girl was like, ha ha ha, stop using so much bronzer, you're turning into an African American. And then she goes, I'm niggerizing. Whoa. And I was just like, I was sitting in the room like, and I just like, I had never felt so alone in my life.
That's Kim. I love Kim. That was from a moment where students were talking about what happened to them on their first day of school. And I think what happens sometimes is people, as my grandmother would say, come out of their mouth without thinking about what they're saying, and it hits us and affects us. And I think that when you are the recipient of this, you have to find a way to move past it. Because sometimes people just say stuff, and it can really affect you. And there's that moment in your life where it can stop you in your tracks and keep you from moving forward. And I like to quote, there's a hip-hop artist you may have heard of called Jay-Z, who in one of his songs talks about brushing the dirt off your shoulders. And the whole idea and the notion is that a lot of stuff is going to come at you. And how are you going to be strong in the face of it and keep moving forward? I'm really committed to, with my work and all that I do, with helping people say, you know what, when someone says something that hits me kind of funny, how can I move forward and brush the dirt off my shoulders? Another phrase that I like to use when it comes to talking about some of this is psychological homelessness. And there's this whole idea, and this connects to this discussion of dual consciousness and existence. Sometimes when you leave an environment that you know and you're comfortable in and jump into another, this happens to all of us, jump into another one, you find yourself like, well, where's my home? Because these folks think and act differently from me and talk differently. And these folks that I've gone away from don't connect me so much. Where is my home? And you can find that space when you jump into an environment where most folks just are not like you, that you start to feel a little homeless. And I like us to think about that phrase, psychological homelessness, and think about the two words. Because psychological is up here, and homeless is potentially a physical identity aspect experience. And think about when you put the two together, if you start feeling that I'm becoming different from the people that I grew up with and that I've known, and I'm going to this new environment and they don't really accept me so much, there's a moment of feeling that you have some sort of psychological homelessness. And with my work, I'm trying to end that concept and end that idea of folks feeling they don't fit in. So I'm going to go to the next one. And there's that, you see that little phrase there, talking white? It's a nice big mouth. I'll play the clip and I'll talk a little bit after that.
When I went home, like my friends were like you're talking white now. Like I don't know how I was talking, but like they said I was talking white, and they said I wasn't like black anymore.
Sometimes it's not even that you have to go home. Like sometimes you'll get it from people in your school who are like, oh wow, she talks white, we can't hang out with her. Like what?
I'm a big code switcher. It's something you have to learn how to do well in boarding school, especially with teachers. You cannot show up to AP classes, AP English, and be like, yo, what up? Like it's just, you won't be taken seriously. Even if you turn the best essay in the class, people will not take you seriously if you talk like you're just from off the street.
I thought that moment was really important to put into the film because I got that when I grew up in one neighborhood that was a certain way. I grew up in Philadelphia, a neighborhood called North Philly, and it was a rough neighborhood. And then I went to my high school, and I started talking differently and acting differently, and I got back home, and folks were like, "You're talking white," and I was like, I don't quite understand what that means, but I kind of get you. And the way I like to talk about this is I like to talk about this through the lens of, you're going to work, thinking about you have a very unique skill set. The idea of changing how you talk and speak in different environments is an actual exercise on the brain. And if you can think about it that way, that's a really powerful mode to go into. Am I going over time? We good? Okay. That's a good idea to think about. When you exercise a muscle, it gets bigger. So sometimes that notion of like, oh, well, you talk this way, you talk that way, it's important to think, you know what, actually I have a double skill set and I'm able to think about myself in this space and this environment. That's extra power. And another way I like to discuss it is around the Black experience. If you don't know this artist, Mr. Kerry James Marshall, I highly, 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 highly recommend you find out about the work of Mr. Kerry James Marshall. He's a beautiful artist who makes some great work that is reflective of our American society, and it is just deep and amazing and dramatic and intense and wonderful. And I'm going to show one last clip that sort of speaks to this idea and notion of the black experience versus what I call the experience of being black.
A real black person would be a person that's from, I mean, the bad part of Germantown, the bad part of Mount Airy, North Philly, West Philly, South Philly, whatever. Not from Mainline, not from Chestnut Hill, living in a big house. I mean, like, I guess it's a certain way you have to talk and walk in order to qualify.
In this community, I'm considered real black. In another community, you know, in my neighborhood, I'm considered a white boy. I go to private school. So it all depends on what environment you're in.
I like that quick little clip because I think this notion of you're not really black or you're not really this, you're not really that is a mistake. If you expect entire black community, the entire Latino community, the entire Jewish community, et cetera, to be one thing, you're making a mistake. So I always push back and say, there's no such thing as a black experience. There's experience of being black. There's no such thing as an Asian experience. There's experience of being Asian. Same with Latino, Jewish, et cetera, et cetera. When we start to push people into these monolithic views and we say, if you don't do it exactly like this, you're therefore wrong, I think we're making a mistake and not allowing people to be who they truly are. And if we don't have a way to come together and have some of these hard conversations, we miss out on the opportunity. I'm working on a film right now in Richmond, Virginia, and Virginia's on my mind a lot this morning. Some of you may know why. But I've been working in Richmond, Virginia for all summer, working with incarcerated youth. And I've been working with people that are the age of some of you that I see in the audience that are in jail right now. And it's heartbreaking. And these young people, they come out of their prison cells to work with us and do these art programs where they're creating art and making music and all kinds of stuff, making videos with the idea of saying, how do we keep you out of prison? And how do we think about other ways to deal with youth that are incarcerated? What I like to, the connection I'm trying to make right now is my effort is to find people and come together and have conversations. So I'm working with the youth that are in prison, and I'm also working very closely with the police of Richmond. And I have to say, I do this work, I fight for justice, working this close with the police, I'm beginning to get some new insights and new ideas and thinking about how we may make a mistake if we don't all come together and sit down with someone who thinks very different from us, run away, who thinks very differently from us, we miss out on an opportunity. And I take that back to that whole idea of we have to think a bit beyond some ways that we have been working. I'm going to wrap up with, I think, 2 more slides for you all. And there it is, that I just said it. There's no such thing as a black experience. Let's see, I like that. So I'm going to start this and say, stand up to Googlers. And when people who are, I've been out to the Google campus and spoken a few times with the folks on campus. It's a beautiful, incredible place. If you ever get a chance to go to Google in Mountain View, California, it's amazing. Recently, they had one engineer, one young man who stood up and talked about the issue connected to women and the engineer field and also in various careers at Google, and said that Google was an echo chamber, saying that we only talk inside about diversity and that conversations around diversities are wrong and bad. And this young man stood up and said, women do not advance in engineer careers because they are not psychologically prepared to do the work. Do people agree with that in the room? Thank you. And so, yeah, I won't go into the whole story, but he's been fired. Yay. We're talking about going to Google, my company, because we go and speak around these issues of what does it mean to have a conversation. I personally, this is how I look at it. I want to sit down and talk to him and say, tell me why you're thinking this way and what led you to this point, this perspective. Because I think that's how we get further along. We just push people away and say, you're wrong, you're bad, you're stupid. Sometimes they are, but I think it's often valuable to sit down and try to have a conversation with someone different from us. And then also create the space you need. Sometimes we go into environments, companies, schools, and they don't have some stuff that we like, that we want to study. Raise your hand and set it up. Say, I want this to be perfect for me. Fight for that environment and create the space you need. And this last one that I want to say to you all is that you are awesome. Don't let anybody ever tell you that. Don't let anybody ever challenge you. If you make a mistake, that's good. There's a line in the Bible. I won't get the exact space it comes from, but the line is fools fear wisdom and instruction. So if I'm wrong about something, I'm like, you know what? Tell me how I can learn and grow and improve. And the big message to you all is that you truly are awesome. And we're here today to tell you that and encourage you along with that message and process. And I'll end with, there you go, I like that. I'll end with this little small thing. Anybody know what that is in the background there? Anybody? 10 points. You know what the image is right there? Anybody know? Oh, come on. No, it's not Star Trek. It's the TARDIS. Who's my friend that said that? I love you. Hi. We're friends. Yeah, that's the TARDIS. And also, this is all I'm a Doctor Who fan. No long story. And the next one's going to be a woman. That's what's up. So this is all my contact information. If you want to reach out, please feel free to check with me. I've already been snapping about the day, so you may see yourself on my little snap feed. But I also put my information out there to say that please do reach out, because I do this work because I really care about us all improving and making the world a better place. I do it for very selfish reasons, so I can sleep better at night. When I think about what's happening right now in Charlottesville, Virginia, and other parts of the world, being here right now in this space makes it easier to digest that, because we are hopefully touching your minds. I'm going to let my friend Renee, when he comes up, give you a Tupac quotation he just gave me that may sum up why we do this work. Tupac, y'all, is in the house. Not in the house. His ideas are in the house, which is really powerful, wonderful. So with that, we'll welcome our panel up. I think some chairs are going to come up, and we'll move into the next phase of our discussion. And thank you for listening and having a dialogue. Okay. Got it? Oh, yeah, right. You want that chair? Wobbly? That's fine. That's okay. So the panelists, you want to, let's put for 2 more chairs are coming up here, and then we'll ask you to join us. Thank you for your patience. The chairs are making their way on stage. Okay, you guys want to come on up? And we'll get started. There we go. I know, right? We had a wibbly wobbly chair. And it's been fixed. Ta-da! Okay, great. So let's start our panel. We have some really distinguished, incredible folks up here who have careers in the STEM career. And I just actually, upstairs, we were told that we may start calling it STEAM to add the A for arts, which I love, which we will hear from our panel, right? Thank you. We like that. We'll talk about that as we go along. So we're going to do a few questions with our panels, and then we're going to allow some questions from you all. But I thought we'd first go down the road, introduce ourselves, and maybe tell briskly, in less than 30 seconds, also why you're here today.
Renee Daughtry, founder of Asymmetry LLC.
Put the mic up to your
Oh,
face.
there we go. Renee Daughtry, founder of Asymmetry LLC, and here to just share some ideas that we've been doing in the community and to talk a little bit more about STEAM.
Oh.
Hi, my name is Veronique Moses. I am a computer scientist, a software engineer for 20 years. I got my bachelor's in computer science from Winthrop University in South Carolina and my master's at NC State. And this is a passionate project for me. I told Amelia, I've spent 20 years recruiting, mentoring, coaching women and underrepresented minorities in STEM. I am, the double. We need more women. We need more underrepresented minorities. So any chance I get, I'm volunteering and committing myself because I need you guys to take over so I can retire. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Crystal Harden. I am the Director of Programs and Strategic Initiatives at Moorhead Planetarium and Science Center. I'm also our Chief Diversity Officer. I am here today because this is my passion. This is what work must be done. And I am here to make sure that I pass the torch and it is carried on after I retire.
Hola, ¿cómo estás? I'm Dr. Chelsea Juarez. I am Assistant Professor in Anthropology and Sociology at NC State. I am a West Coaster. I was born in the Central Valley of California, very near where Cesar Chavez picked grapes in Delano. My father is from Jalisco. He is an undocumented immigrant when he crossed the border. I was born, as my mother was also born, in the state of California. As a first-generation American, I benefited from the education of the UC system. I went to UC Berkeley for free. I got my master's and PhD at UC Santa Cruz for free. And I am here to pay forward. On the backs of giants I stood, and now it is my turn to do this work.
Excellent. Beautiful. We have some great people. Veronique, can you tell us why this focus session is important?
Oh, sure. Can you guys hear me? Yeah.
There we go.
So I'm going to actually piggyback on what you said earlier, Andre, is that, like I said before, this is so important to me. Like Andre said, you guys need to know and see that you belong here. You deserve a seat at the table, and not just there, but to participate at the table. I'm a woman, and I'm also underrepresented minority in STEM. One of the things that I see is that in my job and in careers that I see day to day is that we are vastly underrepresented in the IT career, and that's what is progressing in the future. I know you guys all were born in IT. You probably don't know a day without computers and all this, but the first time I touched a computer was when I was 12 years old. When we look at the computer and engineering field, there's 80% dominated by Asian and white Americans. There's only 12 to 13% of underrepresented minorities, and it's steadily declining. And the engineering field and IT is the wave of the future. Anything we do today is, pretty much rooted in technology. So we need more diverse talents. Not only that, but when we look at youth under the age of 25, just overall, the youth are not going into STEM fields. So the whole STEM field can benefit from a diverse talent pool, and so we just have to do better. We have to just instill in you guys and let you see that you belong here. It's something tangible that you can achieve, and it's not, out in the universe that's not tangible for you to do. So that's my passion, is to just make sure you all know that you can do it.
Beautiful. Thank you. Chelsea, can you tell us what's your favorite part of your job and what's your least favorite part of your job?
So, as I told you, I am an anthropologist at NC State, but I am primarily a forensic anthropologist. And our university, NC State, holds the contract to do forensic anthropology for the state of North Carolina. How many people watch the show Bones or know what the show is? Okay, some. So then those of you who watch the show know that Bones is about a forensic anthropologist, and we specialize in human skeletal material. So we analyze bones, teeth, fingernails, and hair, and we do so in a medical legal context. We're similar to medical examiners for the human skeleton. So I work in the lab at NC State, and I do the forensic anthropological casework for the state of North Carolina. Not just the analysis of the deceased, but also recovery of clandestine burials. And I love my job. My research specialty, I do work on diabetes in the Latino diaspora, but my research specialty is actually provenience analysis on the US-Mexico border. So I analyze bones, teeth, and hair and fingernails from people who die crossing the border trying to come to America. And I analyze their bodies and try to tell the consulate, the law enforcement that we work with, where they were born, so that we can, in hopes that we can repatriate them to their families. I love my research and I love my job. So doing the casework, I get to be the voice for justice for people who have no other option. And it is a very powerful thing. And I love that work. So that's my most favorite part of the work that I do.
Thank you. That's great. And actually, I'm going to switch to Renee now. For one, can you give us that Tupac quotation? And then two, tell us who was the person whom helped influence your life, right? If it's not Tupac.
No, it's not. But I'll start with the second question first. My background and how did I get into this area and who influenced me? Again, a little history of me. I'm from New York. I grew up in the Bronx, okay? There we go.
Boogie down.
In the projects, single parent family, just my mom. And my mom, God bless her soul, was my mom and my dad, my teacher and preacher, and warden and executioner. But she had said education is the key to move forward. But in my life, we had a family friend who we called the professor, Mr. Everett Marius. He was an industrial photographer, and he introduced me to science with a magnifying glass. I was able to see the world differently through this magnifying glass. And being the bad little boy that I was, excuse me, everybody, I learned that besides looking at things through it, I was able to focus the sun and burn things. And that instilled in me why. And that was my beginning of science and technology. It's always been around everything I do, why? And I need to understand that. So I'm going to say that mentor who took my began being a bad little boy, but focused me into the sciences and technology. That made me go think about astronomy. Why is the stars there? You got a love of that. Chemistry, biology, engineering. It all progressed from that. And about the quote, I was in church, and yes, we got to go to church. And I was sitting there going, why am I so focused on our community? Why am I giving back the way I do? And I sat there in church, and a quote from one of our 21st century philosophers came to mind. And the quote is, I ain't going to say I'm going to change the world, but I guarantee I'll spark the mind that will. That's Tupac. And I went, that's why I'm doing what I'm doing.
Great, thank you. Thank you so much for that. That's great. Crystal, if you had to do it all over again, would you choose this career again? Why or why not?
It's an interesting question because I don't think I chose this career. This career chose and found me along the journey. I thought back in, I won't tell you what year, but I thought that I was going to be in corporate America, in business. I never thought I was going to be a chemist. And life and the opportunity to go to college on a North Carolina Teaching Fellow Scholarship allowed me the opportunity to be at North Carolina Central one day, where a dean of School of Education looked at me and said, what do you want to do? And I said, well, I'm going to be a business education teacher, and I'm going to go into corporate America. And he said, that's okay. But why don't you consider doing something where there are not a lot of black females? And he said, so what else do you like to do? So at this point, my mind was already going in circles because I thought I was going to North Carolina A&T State University. My mother changed that on the spot one Saturday, and I'm going to North Carolina Central University. So what do? And I said, I don't know. I got an A in chemistry. And he said, that's it. Perfect. You're a chemist. I'm going to talk to Dr. Myers on Monday. And that's how I became a chemist. I didn't go into the chemistry department thinking that I could do this, but then I met a great man named Dr. John Myers, who became my mentor at North Carolina Central University and showed me that I was an amazing chemist, that I really could do this thing called chemistry, and I loved it, and became a chemistry teacher, and through the process realized that public education and formal education was great, but I really enjoyed the impact that you can make from an informal science education, such as science centers like Moorhead Planetarium and Science Center, where daily I'm able to create programs and initiatives that can have an impact on all citizens of North Carolina and further around the world. And so if I had to do it all over again at this point where I am now in my career, yes, I would take the same route. I would probably make some decisions earlier. I'm finishing my PhD. I probably would have done that a long time ago. But the work that I'm doing, I'm very happy and comfortable every day waking up, going into my job, going on Franklin Street every morning, and seeing the work that we are doing, not only just in Chapel Hill, but around the state of North Carolina. And just being at the table to see new programs coming online daily, and new ideas, and the work that when you have a team working for you, and everyone around the table is excited to be there, and they're not just thinking about one group of people. They are really asking questions, how can we be inclusive to all people? And I love working with a team that is asking that question on a daily basis. We're trying to get it right.
That's excellent. Excellent. I'm going to pose a question. I'm going to aim it at Veronique, and then I want to maybe ask all you all to take part, and then we'll open up to questions from you all, because we want to hear from you and get your thoughts and ideas and help you out. But we'll start with aimed at you, Veronique. What would you recommend that young people do now to prepare for a career in the STEAM universe, whether it be in high school, college, or after college? What do you recommend folks prepare to jump into this universe?
That's a good question. One benefit I would say that all of you guys have here in the Research Triangle Park is you have access to so many resources. You have A&T in Greensboro, you have NC State, you have the museum here. So I would say take advantage of those things, and for the parents in the room, make sure you seek out those things. There's so many free opportunities like Black Girls Code, and now they have, I think, Black Boys Code, and there's so many workshops and community groups and advocacy groups that dedicated for this topic. But just internally, one thing I would say for kids to do, or students to do, is tinker in everything. Whether it's science, it's math, it's art, all those things kind of bring together capabilities that you're going to need for this area. I believe Renee said it earlier, is be a critical thinker. Always think about what if. What if I did it differently? Just don't give up, and they always say think outside of the box, but I would say who needs a box? Think about why is the box even there? What else could be there? Just be that critical thinker, and that's really what drives STEM field no matter where you are. And one of the biggest things is creative. So one thing parents like to not do is kind of steer towards away from music and arts and those type of things. But I would say steer your kids towards those music and arts, because that builds creativity, which is really the foundation of technology. That's like one of the coolest things that I love about technology. I get to create every day. And I would say, I will just leave you, just have confidence. Just have confidence that you can do anything and you belong here. And there's going to be hard times, there's going to be rough times. Math is going to be hard, science is going to be hard. If you want to code like I was a coder, it's not easy. I spent many nights in the labs in undergrad, but you belong here and have that confidence, whatever it takes for you to get there, whether it's quotes or modeling yourself after someone or prayer, but just have that confidence is something that drives you through, and that you need that for any career. But that's what I would suggest for parents and for kids.
Great, that's great. Anyone else from the panel want to jump in and add to that?
Yeah, I could do that. I speak to a lot of now, we got a new audience, elementary kids. Love them, love them. I always talk about those bad words with kids, math and science. That's that foundation of critical thinking, and especially with the kids in the audience. I want you to remember something, that engineering, that word engineering is problem solving. I don't care if it's chemical, electrical, mechanical engineering, it's all problem solving. So problem solving, deductive reasoning, critical thinking, That will prepare you for the jobs that have not been created yet. So that's that foundation.
That's great. And if does anyone have, thank you, yes. Anyone have questions they want to ask us? And while you think about it and raise your hand and the mic comes to you, I'm going to ask Chelsea one more question. So if you have a question, raise your hand and the mic will come over to you. We have Oprah over here, our fake Oprah running around. So Chelsea,
Oprah.
right? While she's coming to you with the mic, I want you to tell us. You mentioned we were talking earlier about this is cultural and it does not just end with taking classes and graduating from college. Can you tell us more about that?
I will, but I want to say one thing about the previous question. 3 things that have basically helped me in my life. Number 1, show up. Number 2, you will not see people like you as you move up. There will be no one. And you must continue to show up, and you have to understand that you have to find an ally even if they don't look like you. You will find somebody to believe in you and to help you, and they may not look like you, and it doesn't matter. Okay? So you show up, and a lot of people are going to tell you no, and you cannot let that stop you, not ever. Not ever, because it means something different for us if we stop than it does for other people. And finally, you don't have to get there like other people do. You just have to arrive, period. Okay?
And something she said earlier, too, it's a lifelong journey. It never stops. All right, you have a question?
Well, you kind of answered my question a little bit, but I just wanted to know, like, for kids growing up and kids coming out of high school and junior high and college, they paint a really pretty picture for you. And, you know, you're thinking about money and you're thinking about all these different things that you can do. It's just like coming out of high school, you're like, oh, I'm kind of done with this. It's time to move on and go to college. You come out of college, you feel the same way you came out of high school. I'm done with this, it's trying to move on, trying to get a career. But there's hardships that come with it, like you said. That's the picture they don't paint for kids. It's not perfect and it's hard. And if it's something that you really want to do, you have to have a passion for it. And it has to really come from your heart. It's not about money, you know? So it's not about all the things that you can obtain, like, you know, vanity things, you know, materialistic things. It's about what you can really give back in order to build a foundation. So I wanted to know, what were some real hardships that you guys went through in your career that made you feel like you wanted to give up many times? Because I'm an engineer, and I changed certain things when I came down here because I wanted to really give back. And in my opinion, certain ways in giving back, you got to do it on your own. So that's what I wanted to know from everybody.
Yeah, when you talk about hardships, that's a really deep question. I'm from rural eastern North Carolina. I'm from Wilson County, and what we call Tobacco Road. So when I was growing up in high school, I knew I was supposed to go to college. I knew my parents were encouraging me to go to college, but I didn't have a support system telling me how to get there. So when I actually found out about a scholarship, I found it out on my own by looking in the book in the counselor's office. A counselor wasn't helping me through the process. I look now at all the opportunities that are available and how I've helped my own children, but yeah, I had to find that out on my own. And then when I got to college, because of my upbringing, I understood that, oh, I cannot give up. And, you know, there was a class called PChem. It's the last class you have to take before you can cross that stage to become a chemist. And PChem was going to be the death of me, I thought. And, you know, those kinds of situations and those kinds of times of hardship, and then, you know, you graduate college, and yeah, you think that you're going to have a certain amount of money when you get that first job, and you're an entry-level teacher, and it's $3,000 a year, and I got a husband, I got a new baby, I got rent to pay, all those kinds of bills, but, oh, I didn't, sorry. I was on full scholarship, sorry. But yeah, my husband had loans. Right, that's true. That's very important. Student loans, yes.
Yeah. Right. 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 I'm gonna stop you right there. I hear you, and I appreciate that. For one, we're streaming live, so folks can't hear you, and that's all good. And that's a strong point, and I think we have some of those. I appreciate that. Veronica, do you want to? I'm going to stop you, brother. I love you. You can come on after us, but go on.
I'm going to try to touch on what you're mentioning. So one of the things that we talked about before we came to the panel was that not only we have a pipeline problem, and then we have significant amount of HBCUs and schools that are actually, developing underrepresented minorities in STEM. But number one, they're not being hired. So companies are not hiring them. They're going to traditional, top IT schools. So that's one issue. And then when you get into the career field, to have women and underrepresented minorities, they are treated out. And why? Climate, like you're saying. So I can talk about my own personal experience in 20 years of being in corporate America in IT at a top 500 firm. I work at IBM. So I've definitely encountered times when I wanted to, you know what, I'm just going to quit and go to Caribbeans. And, and actually, it was actually ended up being a strong fight, but I had a friend who had known me, a coworker who became a friend who had known me for years, and we went to Starbucks one day, and I was like, you know what, I'm just going to be out of here. I'm going to go to academia. I'm going to do whatever. And he's like, no, you can't quit. We need more black females in IT. And we had a drag-out argument. It was like, that we have too many. And I remember that day, it was probably like 6, 7 years ago. And I'm so passionate, and that's every time I think about, because I have another part of me, we talked about before, I'm very much into arts. Every time I think about going another way, I still have to come back to STEM. For me personally, I feel that, like this is the kind of old adage, in corporate America, that for blacks and for women, underrepresented minorities, you have to prove that you can do the job before you get the job. But you see all of your counterparts getting jobs just on faith. And that's happened to me. I've had points in my career where I feel that I've stalled, but I have to maneuver and find my way up and keep going. So you have to be passionate. You got to go back to what Andre said in his slide. You have to demand and expect equity. And I tell a lot of people who I mentor, professionals who I mentor, when you go into your manager office or whoever, you talk about salary, you talk about promotion, because your counterparts, I'm a manager for 13 years, they talk about it. They talk about what they want, they talk about how much they deserve, and they have no qualms about doing it. So you have to be vocal, because if you, whatever said, closed mouth don't get fed, you have to do it. So I am very passionate. Every time I think about, going left or right, I think about my friend Shola. It's like, you need to stay in IT and be a voice, and I am very passionate about this subject. Yeah.
Very quick, young man. Networking. Young man, you have these different events to go to, the National Black Association, BDPA, NSBE. You'll have to start that networking so people know not who you know, but who knows you. I want you to remember that. That's what I live by. My wife is in the audience and will tell you. I go to an event, she speaks to me at the door, I'm a networking fool. I go around and talk to everybody in the room. Young man, do that. So people get to know who you are and what your skill set is. You'd be surprised.
I'll add on to that and say, it's not who you know, it's whom you know.
And we have also questions up on the second floor. So Raven is our microphone runner up there, so we can take one here and we can bounce up there, Andre. Here you go.
I was wondering if there is one thing, whether it's a person or a saying that you use to continue to strive and propel yourself forward and stay positive and fight back on animosity, on what you should be and what people think you should be in the box that you possibly have been put in.
Did y'all hear that? Yes. Okay. You know, I use my children and my grandson as my driving force. I believe I've got to leave this world a better place for them than when I came in it. You know, at this point in age, I've been called assertive. I've been too assertive, too aggressive, too strong. At this age, okay, I'm all that. Take it or leave it. This is what you're going to get. But I'll guarantee you that I can get you results. So, but I'm using those factors in, you know, the young people that I see and the drive and determination that they have and what I see in young people and what they're trying to accomplish as the reason why I have to keep going and doing my best to make it better for them. I'm in a position now where I can impact and make change. So my responsibility is to make sure that I do that on a daily basis and I pave the way for someone else. And I'm really about paying it forward. There were people along the way who helped me, my mother told me you never burn a bridge because you never know when you got to cross that bridge again. So I make sure that I never burn a bridge, but I'm building bridges with someone behind me because they're going to have to cross. I need to help them across. And so I live by that on a daily basis. And I'm trying to do my best to pay it forward for those who are trying to get somewhere as well.
Okay, we have a question from the upstairs. Yes.
Hello, I have a question that I would like you to speak to for the young people in the room. My children are adults now. They didn't have as many obstacles as some do at this point. But in my own life and in my children's life, we were not ridiculed for academic excellence. And I would like this panel to speak to the young people in the room about being proud to be an A student and carrying their head high when they excel, when they participate in science fairs, when they may participate in a band. They're not a band nerd. I would like you to speak to the fact that it's okay to strive for excellence.
I'm happy to take that. As I mentioned, when my father first came to this country, he worked in the field. He then became a mechanic. So our family was not a family of professors for sure. I was one of many cousins. My father there are 8 living siblings of our family, and we were poor. And there was definitely a divide between us and other people. And a lot of my cousins who were equally as intelligent as me didn't have the same opportunities. They ended up in gangs, and they ended up in prison. And the thing that we have to remember is that it doesn't make us not ourselves to be excellent. We can define what that word means. For me, being excellent doesn't make me less Latina. It makes me more. And we're going to have to talk to our families, to our friends, because the fear, at least from the perspective of my family, was that they were going to lose me, that I was going to leave our group, our tribe, and become somebody that they didn't know. And so as we achieve, we have to reinforce it doesn't change us into something that they don't recognize. It makes us who we are meant to be.
Yeah, that's really thank you. That's really wonderful, and I think that touches to, you gave me another way of talking about that psychological homelessness. And I also, to answer part of that question, I think that sometimes, and this is not my phrase, but I love it, is that sometimes hurt people. And when folks are in an environment and they see someone else moving in a different direction, it's hard to celebrate that victory, and therefore there's there's something inside of us, sadly, that wants to pull folks back. And it can be connected to the fear of losing a family member. It can be connected to not understanding what's happening. It can be connected to someone just having pain and not knowing how to express it. So I always try and respond back with love in some way and really push and see how I can connect with somebody in that space. And yes, celebrate and embrace the excellence. I spent a lot of time ashamed of being able to finish a book in a day, but now as an adult, I see where the power actually lies in that.
I had a question about the advice to demand equity. I think that's a great advice, and I wanted to know, how do you do that without playing the race card, or is it appropriate to talk about race when you're demanding that equity? Because if you see injustice everywhere in the community and where you work, sometimes that can be polarizing, and that could cause you to not want to be in that field where there's only one or two of you. So how do you have that conversation without playing the race card, or are you supposed to talk about race openly?
I was just going to chime in. I think just from my experience, the first thing you can talk about is your performance, and everybody can have different answers or different responses. But for me, is if you have tangible results and you have tangible business results, then that's your first foundation of demanding equity. And it's almost taken away the easy out for whoever you're talking to. If you talk about race, or I'm a woman, that's just like the easy out for them to, just disregard the conversation. But business results, and nobody, like I said, money is green, right? It's like, talk about what you're delivering, and then there's probably scenarios where there are just direct racial issues, but in those cases where it's just about you trying to demand equity, and whether you're a woman or whether you're an underrepresented minority, I would first start talking through and making sure you have support, you have business results. And one thing I think someone touched on it over here, is that if in these fields, there are not going to be a lot of people that look like you. So a lot of my supporters are white males. And so when you step into the room, or, one thing I told the reporter the other day is that my mom never taught me that I was less than. I come from historically black K through 12. I lived in a black community, small town in South Carolina. Blacks live on one side of railroad tracks, whites live on the other. I was nurtured by black, high school teachers, kindergarten all the through. But when I went to a predominantly white university, undergrad and graduate, and then into a predominantly career, I never think that I'm less than, and just be vocal and know that you deserve everything, and then, talk through your business results first. And then, of course, address any kind of racial scenarios that are just overt or not overt. So that's the way I would address it.
Something else I see personally, personal branding. With use of social media, who you are and what you are. I speak to elementary kids, middle school, and high school kids. I said, your brand is just as important as Starbucks. You are a $2 billion brand, because your brand will take you through doors that you've never been before. As people know what you can do and who you are, they will speak about you. Your reputation will be out there. So I tell them now, because of social media, guard yourself immensely. Guard what's posted about you. Be careful of what you post. But that personal branding will get you far.
I would just add really quickly one thing. There is a taboo, obviously, to call out what is happening to you in the workplace. It is a taboo for you to be the woman of color, the only woman of color, and say, hey, you're doing this to me, and I know you're doing this to me because I'm a woman of color. And the way that you can protect yourself against that in academia is to know on campus legally who your allies are, to know the buzzwords that people say and what those buzzwords really mean. And also, instead of having to get into a nitty-gritty discussion with somebody about you are being a racist, bigamous person towards me, you can say buzzwords back to them, legal buzzwords that they understand. Like, for example, you are bullying me in my workplace. That's a legal word in academia. You are harassing me. I am being harassed. This is how I'm being harassed. And then you can escalate that as needed be. And so, unfortunately, what I'm saying is you have to learn the game and you have to play the game.
There's a question up top.
Okay, great. Is it a young person? We don't hear from young people.
I'm speaking on behalf of my daughter.
Okay, go for it.
I have three girls and ages 8, 11, and 15.
Can't hear you.
I have three girls, ages 8, 11, and 15. And I actually am an engineer. I have a chemical engineering degree and an MBA. And I've struggled in academia. I've struggled in corporate America, but I've made my way. They hate math, all three of them. And if you could just emphasize the importance of math in your professions, because they don't think they'll need it, but because I like math and they hate it, I need some help and support in trying to justify why they need to get better at math.
My first question would be, why do they hate math? Because somewhere there's been a trigger that's told them that they hate math. So we need to find out what is that trigger so we can overcome that trigger and show them different ways that math is used that relates to things that they do like, so that we can show them that, yes, it is all around them, and it's fun, and it's part of everything else that they like to do. But we need to find out what is that trigger that is telling these three girls that they hate math. One of the things we learned from Hidden Figures is that without a woman figuring out how to tell a man how to get to the moon, he wouldn't have gotten there. So we need to make sure our women, our girls, understand that they were coding long before boys and men were. But somewhere, something is telling them that they don't like it or they can't do it any longer. And we need to address that trigger and then show them all the great ways that it is used. Being a former public school educator, I know that sometimes in formal education, teachers aren't allowed or don't have the resources to show our children really the wonderful ways that we can use math in our daily lives and how it is used. So I would want to expose them to various other ways for them to see math in a fun and productive and exciting way, and then overcome those triggers that have told them that they don't like it.
And I'm going to point you somewhere. Showdoor Education, www.showdoor.com, has math games, science games, so this way the elementary, middle school, and high school kids can play games. I know my millennials, game enthusiastic, but this way, at least that math and something in a way that they can actually enjoy it. So I would, again, suggest showdoor.com. Go there and check it out.
And I'll give you one more name as a teacher that I had in high school, because I was not so great at math and I was afraid of it, but I made it through my calculus class. A woman, her name is Joan Countryman, and she was actually the first head of Oprah Winfrey School, the Freedom Academy School for Girls in South Africa. She started each of our calculus classes with the journal entries. We spent 10 minutes at the top of every class doing a journal entry, and that got me through calculus. But look up Joan Countryman. She does a lot of writing about math, and actually a lot of math about math and girls, and she's a great resource.
Got a question here.
Oh, okay. So I'm a young person, so to speak. I'm a rising senior, East Chapel Hill High School. So coming from this school, it's very heavily white populated. It's pretty much a PWI. And I know I want to go into a STEM field type thing, whether it be automotive engineering or some type of science. But like, I don't remember what your name was. Yes.
Veronique.
Veronique said, Miss Veronique said, there's a declining rate of minorities within that field. And I was just wondering, because I was looking this up a little earlier, that there is some things that said, like, it doesn't matter which college you go to in the STEM field as long as you go to a certain college. And then there are some things that said, like, if you go to a certain college, you're more inclined or more welcomed in certain companies than others because you come from that college. So I was just wondering if there was a way, or not a specific path, but a general guideline you could follow as to go into the STEM field, because I find it hard to get in the first place, and then let alone climb up.
So you're a student at East Chapel Hill High, is that correct?
Yeah, yes.
So you are already at one advantage that some students in North Carolina are not. In that in North Carolina, we are finding that some of our students who are more in the Triangle area, the Triad area, the Charlotte area, who are coming from certain high schools, have access to certain resources and opportunities that other students don't. So when they have an opportunity to go to college and they're applying for colleges, colleges are looking at those students coming from certain schools differently than others. And the other thing that you have an advantage on in resources is that when you get to college, you probably have had experiences in your science classes that other students have not. So you are advantaged, you have some privilege over some other students already. That's just the reality of the situation. But I would say that depending on where you want to go and where you decide to go, you need to want to look at what is it you want to do, what is your passion, and find those universities and those opportunities that fit for you what you want to do. And then you have to visit those places, and you have to look and see where is going to be the best fit for me. And then when you get there, the key is when you get there, what you do when you get there. Because when you do get there, you have got to work harder, you've got to network and work harder and do internships and do apprenticeships. And those are the steps that will get you into graduate programs or get you into your early career track, whatever it is that you want to do. We may argue, go back and forth about which universities are better for certain majors, if you want a job right away in certain majors. But what's really key is what you do when you get there. You just cannot go through those 4 years and think that, okay, as long as I keep a 3.0, that I'm going to get to the next level or it's going to get me here. A 3.0 is great. That's wonderful. I'm not saying anything's wrong with that. But in the world we live in today, you really have got to network with your professors. You've got to network with those corporations coming in to do visits. You have got to do internships, paid or unpaid. You've got to do all those kinds of things to get into your field, into your area of interest, and then to live your passion, live your dream.
So that is a really good question. I just want to share a story and some other tidbits. So I talked about those universities that companies don't recruit from. Well, IBM didn't recruit from Winthrop University, which is a small liberal arts college south of Charlotte. But my girlfriend and I, who also work in the IT field, Raquel, we got in our cars and we drove to another university that IBM was recruiting at. And we hijacked their career fair. So you gotta think creatively. So I would do, it is a real issue. So it is a real issue that some universities are not being actively recruited at in the IT field. But be creative. Like we went to another UNC, so I'll say UNC, and hijacked a career fair. NSBE is one. NSBE is a national organization, National Society of Black Engineers. I personally recruit at NSBE a lot from IBM, and we get people from all universities across the U.S., not the typical, like the typical top 10 IT university. So when you get into college, join organizations like that, go to their conferences. NSBE have a conference once a year in different locations across the cities. It's like 3-4 days long. And there's a big recruiting event, and I've hired several people from NSBE personally. And there's other things like Black Engineer of the Year Award Conference, BEA, that's the BDPA that you mentioned. So be creative no matter what college you land at. And you may find you need to go through some back channels to get where you want to go.
In the interest of time, we only have time for 2 more questions, and I'm going to take this young lady and this young lady. But there was a question that you all slowly repeat the websites that you two just mentioned.
Shodor Education, www.shodor.org.
And I mentioned a woman by the name of Joan Countryman. If you Google her name, you'll find lots and lots of resources. Joan Countryman.
Hello. When you were going into the field that you're in now, have you ever doubted yourself?
Yes.
Yes.
All the time.
I'll jump in because that actually connects with my thought of the last question that the young man asked. And that's a beautiful question, and thank you for asking that. Yes, there's constant doubt. The gentleman in front of you talked about how we go out into the world and life is difficult and life is hard. It's beautiful as a kid in many ways. But when you face some harder moments, how do you stand up in the face of it? What I try and tell people, and what I like to believe, is think about your intellectual self and think about your emotional self and how the two come together and how they meet. So sadly, there are lots of moments where people are just going to try and stop you and say no and talk about you and say you can't, make fun of your clothes, your hair, et cetera, et cetera. Oftentimes when people are doing that, like what I said earlier, hurt people hurt people. And if you can find some way to be strong in the face of those moments that may cause doubt, or look inside and understand why you may have that doubt, I think that's how you begin to deal with it. So you heard us all kind of, or saw us all kind of nod our heads like, yeah, we tremendously doubt ourselves. I can speak from the entertainment world. You know, with my movie, The Prep School Negro, when I went to my friends in Hollywood and said, I want to make a film called The Prep School Negro, they all kind of turned and did this, you know, and said, good luck with that. But I believed in what I was doing, and I kept pushing and fighting for it. And here I am, many years later, still talking about it and getting to witness a beautiful moment like that when you ask that really deep and existential question that we all have dealt in the face with. So yes, I have, and yes, I fight it every day.
I want to add one thing to both the young lady and the young man who asked the question about hardships earlier. One thing that is very important when you doubt yourself is a great support system. And understand that support system sometimes may not be your family, may not be your friends, it may be coworkers at work, it may be some classmates you never thought about. But having a support system and someone to talk to who gets it, if it's one person, if it's two people, if it's a group of you, having a support system is so important. Being an African American woman, we are told daily that we have to be strong. We have to be these super women. It's kind of like a conditioning thing. I feel like I've gone through for the last 47 years about being strong. Some days I am not strong. Some days I just don't have it in me to be strong, not one more minute. And when those days come, I have a support system, someone that I can call on the phone, girl, I need 5 minutes. I just need 5 minutes you to get me through. And you need to have that. So whether it may be someone in your family, maybe your friend, but we all need a support system to help us get through whatever that hardship is, whatever that moment is, whether it's school-based or whether it's personal, we need that support system.
And young lady, one other thing, that when I start to feel that way, I'm a child of the Lord. Nothing will stop me. I want you to remember that, okay?
All right. Before I take this last question, I just want to let you all know that these fine people have agreed to stick around after this is over and answer some questions for you. So this is our last question.
Hello, I'm Monique. My daughter is right here, and her friends are over here and over there as well. What I like to say, and she doesn't want me talking, but what I like to say is I appreciate this conversation. I especially appreciate the part about math and this popular term that math is hard, as opposed to saying, how can we approach it? What I'd like to hear from you in terms of academic challenges, so that they understand that there will be some more challenging courses. What were those challenging courses for you, and how did you overcome it?
Geometry. Geometry. And how did I overcome it? Woo! You just have to, tutors help. Finding someone who loves geometry. The key is finding someone who understands it. And you have to play, you got to play that little game of, we might have to have lunch. Can we have lunch together? Can we go hang out after school and bring your proofs with you? You have to find those kinds. Someone is making an A or B, and you want to be their friend for that semester. If if it's not working out for you, and that's okay. It's okay, because they might need you the next semester in another course. And so you just share, and you spread it, and you spread the love, and we all get through this, and we move on to the next course. But do let your support system at home, let your support system at home know you're struggling. And I say this from having 2 children in college. Let your support system know that you are struggling with a subject. Because believe it or not, mom and dad might have some good ideas on how to help you figure it out. They may not be great with geometry, but they may know someone who is, and they can make a phone call for you. Or they can go talk to the teacher and find resources to help you figure out how to get through that course, whatever that course is. But yeah, for me, it was geometry.
I was going to say, for me, it was in high school. I probably was geometry too. Actually, I'm thinking about. Geometry was a struggle for me in high school, but for undergrad, I was thinking about this actually like the other day. Undergrad, it was algorithms, and in graduate school, it was algorithms. Like, dang, algorithms. But kind of piggyback on what Crystal said, is a friend. I mentioned my friend Raquel. We met I think our first class in undergrad, and she was a black female in computer science. And I think when we graduated, we were probably the only two black females that graduated together that year. And we kind of played on each other's strengths. You know, we studied together, we pushed each other. She challenged me, she motivated me. She was much more organized than I was, but we would study together. And I think I probably would have been, we talk about women and minorities are treated out of technical field. Having a buddy from the beginning to the end made it 150% so much. Even in our careers today, we still talk to each other and call each other and like, girl, the same thing. And we've been in the career. So I think having friends that think like you on the same path, that's so important. And then tutoring is so important, finding people that, can help you. But for me, it was algorithms. Yeah, I had to when I was in graduate school for master's, I actually had to make a decision. I think I need to drop this class and retake it the next year. And I had to drop. It was the only class I dropped in graduate school, and then I retook it the next semester and got a B. It just clicked. But the first semester, it was just not happening.
And mine was word problems. Train A leaves station B, train B. I spent the summer with a book going through word problems and really understanding those. And once I did that, believe it or not, all the other maths fell into place. But it was that concentration of going out and reading, understanding, and just taking that time on the side and asking questions. Always asking why and asking for help.
I would quickly add one thing, and that is that you have to remember that there's no shame in not knowing. Never pretend like you know something that you don't know when you're in a classroom, because you are there to learn, and somebody is there to help you. So there's no shame in not knowing. And when you can get past the fear that you don't know something, then it allows you to get to a place where you're open to figuring out a way that you can grasp it. And the other thing that I would remind you is do everything to help yourself succeed. If you feel not strong about something, if you feel scared that you're not going to be able to do as well as other people, do everything in your power to help yourself succeed. And just know what that means for you.
This is beautiful. I'm going to wrap us up with some. I was going to ask for final thoughts, but I think we need to really wrap up. But I think thank you all to our panelists. They really did a tremendous job. Let's give them a round of applause. I was nervous about coming to do this because I'm not a STEM person. And the funny thing is, geometry was actually my favorite course in all the maths, which is wild. But I think that we heard some really powerful pieces up here. I thank you all for coming out. Monique, it's your mom's job to embarrass you at every turn, so thank you for that. That's what parents do. And the message I think that one message I want to echo out to you and make sure we really heard it is that you are awesome. You can do this. It's a difficult, tough field, and that's why you should pursue it. And we are out here watching you, supporting you, helping you, and excited to see all that you do in the future. And with that, I will wrap us out and welcome Amelia back to stage to close us out. So thank you all so much for coming out today.
Y'all, let's give him a round of applause. Andre Robert Lee, Renee Daughtry, Veronique Moses, Crystal Harden, and Dr. Chelsea Juarez from NC State. Parents, go on LinkedIn, find these folks, Google them, friend them on Facebook. It's so many people asking, how do we get a copy of this? And I'm so glad you asked. We live streamed this today, and once it is done being in final production, we will post it to our website along with all of the other programs that we have live streamed and recorded on our website, which is naturalsciences.org/race. It has everything about the race exhibit. It has everything about all of our programming and full recordings of everything that we've done here today. You guys, thank you for making this first time ever event a success. Give yourselves a round of applause. Alfred Mays, come join me for a moment. I know you had some final words about potentially a portal opportunity, right?
Just one quick plug. The Borough's Welcome Fund has invested in a portal that provides access to STEM programs and opportunities across the state. There's more than 300 programs inside the portal. It's ncstemcenter.org, ncstemcenter.org. Please visit the site, parents, students, educators, administrators, and tap into these wonderful resources. I'd like to also mention that we're partnering with the North Carolina Science Festival, and we'll be promoting their month-long events next year as a part of this portal collaboration. So it's a great resource. Take advantage of it. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Have a great day. They're going to stick around if you have additional questions.